Somebody gave me a thumbs up and then they left and then they took it away. Don't take it away. Don't take it away. Come in, come in, come in. Don't be shy. Don't be shy. Hi, Mary. I'm super late. Hi, Sassy Darcy. Anybody remember Telly Savalas? Remember? Beep, beep, beep. Beep, beep. Really late, really late. Yeah, bald head with the sucker saying, "Who loves you, baby?" Yeah, Kojak. Yeah. Well, there's a chapter here in Haunted Highways called Telly's Phantom. The most famous highway ghost story of all is that of the Phantom Hitchhiker. Hi, Denise. Once I start reading, I'm just going to keep reading. So let me see if anybody else comes in or not. And I'll say hi. Still a bunch of drama going on tonight, I see. People flipping and flopping, and one minute they love one person, the next minute they hate them. You know? And just don't get it. I don't get it. I don't get it. Fill you in, you have no idea. Hi, Denise Renee. Well, you know, Granny's Watching has been relentlessly attacked by NC, you know who that is, the reclining lady, and a whole bunch of other people have gone in on it with her, a bunch of other channels, you know, they're all against Granny's Watching. Well, now Country Joe today went up on Granny's Watching's panel and apologized to her and said she just doesn't want any fighting going on anymore. Well, that made a bunch of these others blow a gasket. Dorothy went live, and then Country Joe went over on Dorothy's, and Dorothy was just screaming at her, and Country Joe, you know, yelling back at her, and then Recliner got her channel back. She's up again on Recliner 3.0. She's not supposed to be, and I hear people are reporting her like crazy left and right, you know, they're reporting her for ban evasion or evasion banned, because she's banned. She's not supposed to have another channel right now. Right, Darcy. Yeah, she cannot stand her. And it's just all a big mess, you know. And so many of these people trying to help Natasha get back. And now she's back on 3.0. She started that channel back in January, I guess, so that if she did lose a channel, she could go on that one. But that's breaking terms of YouTube policy. So she has been being reported left and right by like Kim and Crafton. Doug was up on their panel tonight, and boy, was he mad at Natasha for all the things she said about him. And I couldn't listen to a lot of it because I was on Carolyn's. But yeah, it's just all a big mess, They're all such hypocritical. They all hypocrites, They all do the same thing to each other. I know, Sassy. I know. I really miss her too. I wish she was the Dorothy that we knew, that always seemed like she was standing up for the right thing, no matter what. Well, I'm not telling you to report it because I'm not allowed to say that stuff. I'm just telling you that it's been reported. I've heard people have reported it. That's all I'm going to say, because I can't encourage something like that. Or I could lose this one, And I enjoy having this little channel. Right, Sassy Darcy. I do miss her. I miss the real Dorothy. She doesn't seem like the real Dorothy to me. Everything she said she would never do, she's done now, What can you do? That's what she wants, right? It's her choice. But yeah, I really miss her too. Hi, New England. Denise Renee, Jen Grill. Okay, now I'm just going to start reading, okay? For a little bit. And then getting back into bed. This is about Telly Savalas, New England thrifter, from Haunted Highways. The most famous highway ghost story of all is that of a phantom hitchhiker. But what would you say if you found that the person who gave you a lift when you needed one turned out to be a ghost? Maybe in the spirit world. Turnabout is fair play. Who loves you, baby? That phrase, heard everywhere in the 1970s, was the trademark of Kojak, TV's bald, lollipop-licking New York City police detective portrayed by charismatic actor Telly Savalas. Born Aristoteles Savalas on January 22nd, 1922. He'd be 100 years old in January of this year. In Garden City on Long Island, New York, the popular TV and film actor was the son of Greek Americans. His father owned a restaurant, and his mother was an artist. Young Telly served as a soldier in World War II. I didn't know that. Then worked in a variety of jobs as a lifeguard, a newspaper vendor, and for a time, a journalist for ABC News. All down to earth, real world jobs. It was this background that Savalas was able to bring so effectively to his signature role as Lieutenant Theo Kojak. Telly's first acting experience was in episodic television, but by 1962, he had also begun to branch out into movies, appearing in such films as Cape Fear and giving an Oscar-nominated supporting performance in Birdman of Alcatraz. Oh, I remember him in that. That's such a good movie. Burt Lancaster in that. And that was based on a true story. He shaved his head for a standout role as Pontius Pilate in 1965's The Greatest Story Ever Told. And it was such a strong, distinctive look that he kept it throughout his long career. He became known for playing tough guys with a soft streak or an edgy sense of humor, so the role of Kojak was an easy fit. Little wonder he was identified with it for the remainder of his life. Even for actors, There's always a definitive line between reality and the world of make believe. But all that changed for Savalas when he had a life altering brush with the unknown. The encounter haunted the actor until he died in 1994, one day after his one day after his 72nd birthday. His experience was one of the rarest of ghost phenomena. He was actually a passenger in a phantom car. When you think of Long Island, the first thing that comes to mind usually isn't a dark, deserted highway. After all, the island's western boundary is just across the narrow band of the East River from downtown Manhattan, home to more than 1.5 million souls. On Long Island itself, you'll find another 4 million people living in just the Bronx and Brooklyn. But as you move farther out on the island, away from the New York City limits, the cities shrink into towns and small communities. Some are little more than villages. By the time you reach Montauk, at the island's easternmost shore, you'll find a mere 4,000 local residents living there year round. It was near one of these unexpected rural enclaves in early 1957 that our story takes place. Get a drink. Driving home from a cousin's house on Long Island late one night, or more accurately, early one morning, Savalas noticed that his gas tank was almost empty. Please, he thought, don't run out of gas. It was 3 a.m., long after sensible people on that part of the island were in bed, and it was pouring down rain. If only he could make it the last few miles home. But then the engine started to sputter. He was riding on fumes. Suddenly, he eased his car onto the shoulder of the road as the engine died. Pulling his shirt collar up over his head, he got out into the downpour. His eyes searched down the lonely stretch, first one way and then the other, as he'd feared, as he'd feared nothing except for that light. Although he could hardly make it out through the rain, way off in the distance was a red neon sign. Then he remembered he had passed a diner on the way to his cousin's. That must be it. He started out on a soggy jog toward the glow. When he got to the diner, his heart sank. In those days, many roadside stores had gas pumps out front, and he had hoped he might find one standing by the diner, but no such luck. Worse yet, there were no cars out front. Sure, the lights were on, but was the place open? Shaking his clothes, Savalas stepped inside onto the linoleum floor. It was a typical 1950s diner, a long counter with stools across the front from the entrance and the usual rows of red-backed booths. Though the small window to the through the small window to the kitchen, Telly could see a man at the grill wearing a small white paper hat and a grease-soaked apron. Hi, Elizabeth T. A lone waiter stood behind the counter reading. Otherwise, the diner was completely empty. Little wonder, thought Savalas, who in his right mind would be out at this time of night in this weather. Can I help you? Yes, Savalas said, and without going into detail, he asked if there was an all-night gas station anywhere in the area. The waiter gave Savalas directions to a garage less than a mile down the road. I'd be happy to give you a lift myself, the counter kid offered, but as you can see, it's just me and the guy in the back. Good luck, though. With that, having decided that the soaked man standing in front of him wasn't going to stay long enough even for a hot cup of coffee, the waiter turned back to his magazine. Savalas walked back into the rain. Already soaked, he started to run in the direction the young man had pointed. He had gotten only a few blocks, however, when a long, sleek black Cadillac pulled up beside him, slowed, and stopped. With all the rain streaming down the car's windows, Savalas could barely tell that anyone was inside. But then the driver slowly rolled down a window and shouted, "Do you need a lift?" Aw, thank you, Elizabeth T. I'm just going to read this one story and get off. I can see it's already getting daylight here. It's almost 6 a.m. and I am getting really tired. But at least give you one story. Telly wasn't used to hitchhiking, and he wasn't really in the mood to deal with a stranger. But under the circumstances, he figured beggars couldn't be choosers. He opened up the door and got in. Immediately, he felt the warmth inside the car envelop him, and he was glad to finally be somewhere he could start to drive. The driver had a calm, reassuring voice as he asked, "Where are you heading?" Savalas explained what had happened, and as they quietly rode toward the gas station, Telly let his eyes take in the driver. He was immaculately dressed in a slightly dated black tuxedo, with a crisply pressed white shirt and bow tie. His black hair was neatly combed back, and he wore a perfectly trimmed mustache. With that getup, thought Savalas, he could easily have been a stand-in for Fred Astaire in any of those old MGM movies. Finally, Telly's curiosity got the better of him. "You're dressed up pretty swanky for this time of night. If you don't mind my asking, where are you heading?" In a low monotone, and with just the slightest hint of sorrow, the driver simply stated, "To the crossroads." Involuntarily, Savalas shivered. The crossroads? What was that supposed to mean? Was this guy loony? Telly was beginning to have second thoughts about having gotten into the car when, much to his relief, the service station came into sight. The stranger pulled his car into the lot. Savalas reached into his pocket to offer the accommodating driver some money for his trouble and panicked. His wallet was missing. Mentally retracing the events of the evening, he quickly realized that he had left the billfold back at his cousin's house. Not only couldn't he give the stranger any money to thank him, he couldn't even pay for gas for his own car. Oh well, that was his problem, not the stranger's. Savalas apologized for not being able to offer him anything. "But give me your name and address, and I promise I'll put something in the mail." The man hesitated. "Just happy to help you get out of the rain, and I'm glad the gas station was open. In fact," the driver reached into his coat, pulled out a dollar bill, and handed it to Savalas. "Perhaps you can use this for some gas." "Hi, Big Mama. Mama." I know, right? Now Savalas really felt stuck. He needed the money, or he'd be trapped at the gas station at the garage until morning when he called someone to get a lift home. But he couldn't accept money from a complete stranger. Telly agreed to take the cash, but only, he insisted, if the driver would let him repay him. Reluctantly, the man agreed. He said his name was Harry Aganis, and he hastily scribbled down his address and phone number and handed it to Savalas. Without another word, Telly dashed to the door of the service station. He turned to wave goodbye to the man who had come to his aid, but the Cadillac was gone. It was almost as if the car had disappeared into thin air. It wasn't until a few days later that Savalas found the paper with a phone number stuffed into the bottom of his pocket. When he called, it wasn't Harry's voice that answered, however, but a woman's. Hello, is this Mrs. Aganis? May I speak with Harry? Right, Big Mama. And it's Telly Savalas. Remember the actor Kojak? This is his story. And they said it haunted him for the rest of his life. And if he was alive today, he would have turned 100 in January. There was silence on the other end for what seemed like an eternity. Then a clearly agitated voice rang out. Is this some kind of joke? Who is this? Taken aback, Telly rushed to explain that he had met her husband a few nights before and that Harry had helped him out. He wrote down his name and number on a piece of paper and, That's impossible, she said curtly. My husband Harry is dead. He's been dead for 3 years. Then a dial tone. She had hung up. Dead? For 3 years? Savalas mulled over what he had just heard. How could that be true? And if it was, who had picked him up? Maybe that would explain why the man hadn't wanted to give Telly his name. After all, the guy was all dressed up, driving out there all alone in the middle of the night, and heading to, quote unquote, the crossroads. Who knows where he was actually heading and why he wanted to keep his identity a secret. As the days went on, Savalas began to feel guilty. Clearly, he had upset the woman who had answered the phone, but they had both been the victims of a tasteless prank. He didn't want to call her back, figuring it would only distress her more getting another unwanted phone call. So, as awkward as the confrontation would be, Telly resolved to meet Mrs. Aganis face to face to say he was sorry. He drove to the address the man had written down, and with some trepidation, he walked up the sidewalk to the front door of her home and knocked. As soon as Mrs. Aganis opened the door, he rushed into the speech he had prepared. His name was Telly Savalas. He was the one who had called her the other day. He wasn't trying to be funny or cruel. He thought they might both be the butt of a nasty practical joke. She looked at the actor for a moment and could see the sincerity in his eyes. She widened the door and invited him inside. As they sat down, Telly handed her the paper the mysterious driver had given him. Mrs. Aganis' hands started to shake and tears welled up into her eyes. How could you have gotten this? Savalas was puzzled. Hadn't he just explained? You don't understand, Mrs. Savalas. Mr. Savalas. This is Harry's handwriting. Stunned, Telly objected. That couldn't be possible. Then, as Savalas described the man who had given him a lift, his wardrobe, and the car, Mrs. Aganis stood. Without a word, almost as if in a trance, she walked across the room and removed a well-worn album from a weathered bookcase. She sat down next to Savalas and started to flip through the pictures. This was my Harry. Savalas recognized him instantly. It was the same man, proudly standing next to a black, shiny Cadillac. In a soft, dreamlike voice, she told her story. Harry died in that car 3 years ago. He had been at a party, wearing that musty old tuxedo of his, and he was driving home around 3 a.m. Out at the crossroads, about a mile down the road from where that gas station is that you mentioned. His car was hit by a truck, and my Harry was killed. The two then sat speechless, considering the implications of what she had just told him. The conclusion was inescapable. For at least one night, Harry had returned. A phantom driver had paused, just long enough to give a hitchhiker a hand before returning to his destiny at the crossroads. Had it happened before? And would Harry ever return to help anyone else? Savalas was never to find out, for he swore to himself at that moment and kept his promise never to accept a ride on that haunted highway again. That is creepy, isn't it? Oh, I've got to go though. I'm getting super tired. Just a short live, a quickie, one story. I appreciate you guys coming to listen. The next one we'll read is going to be, remember James Dean? It's going to be about him, and it's called The Curse of the Little Bastard. It'll be about, excuse me, him and the car that he was driving in, I guess they're saying is cursed. So good night, you all. Thank you for stopping in for a short little story. Okay. Thank you so much. Night, everybody. And if you're overseas, over there, over across the pond, have a wonderful day. Bye bye.